The Beverly Hills sun was beginning to set as Sophia Rose Stallone, 27, daughter of the legendary Sylvester Stallone, strolled casually through the gleaming hallways of Century City Mall. Designer bags slung over her arms and her cell phone in hand, she smiled as she texted her father about the dinner they were having that night to celebrate her mother, Jennifer Flavin's, birthday. What Sophia didn't notice were the three men who had been following her discreetly since she left Balenciaga. "Miss Stallone?" A man in a dark suit and mirrored sunglasses approached with a professional smile. "I'm mall security. We have a situation with your vehicle in the parking lot." Sophia frowned in confusion. Her Tesla Model X was valet parked, as it always was. Before she could question it, she felt a slight sting in her arm. Her body instantly felt heavy, her vision blurry. When Sylvester Stallone, 78, got the call at his Palm Beach, Florida, mansion, his world came crashing down. The distorted voice on the other end of the line was blunt. "We have your daughter. 5 million. No police." The veteran actor, who had faced fictional enemies in dozens of action films, suddenly felt vulnerable in the face of real danger that threatened what he loved most. "Frank, I need you now." Stallone's voice shook on the phone as he spoke to Frank Grillo, his longtime friend and former bodyguard, now a celebrity security consultant. "Sophia's been kidnapped. I can't call the police." Grillo, who had known Sophia since she was a child, felt his blood run cold. "I'm on my way, Sly. Don't do anything until I get there." Jennifer Flavin, a former model and Stallone's wife of nearly 3 decades, collapsed on the living room couch, surrounded by awards and memorabilia from her husband's career. How could this happen? She was just shopping. Tears streamed down the 56-year-old's still beautiful face as her other daughters, Sistine and Scarlett, tried to comfort her. Stallone's phone buzzed again. A message with a photo, Sophia unconscious, tied to a chair, with a newspaper next to her to prove that the image was recent. The veteran actor felt a primal rage rise inside him, something he hadn't experienced since his days playing characters like Rocky Balboa and John Rambo. But this time, there was no script, no director yelling cut, no second chance. "Let's keep this out of the public eye," Stallone decided as he huddled with Grillo and 2 former Blackwater agents whom the bodyguard had brought with him. "If the press finds out, Sophia will be in even more danger." The men agreed. In Hollywood, secrets were valuable currency, and Stallone knew all too well how the media circus could turn a family tragedy into a spectacle. Meanwhile, in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Los Angeles, Sophia began to regain consciousness. The smell of sea air and motor oil invaded his nostrils. Through his blurry vision, he could make out 3 men, a tall, thin one who appeared to be the leader, a burly one with tattoos on his arms, and a third, younger man who looked nervous and out of place. "She's awake," the tattooed man said, approaching with a bottle of water. "Drink," he ordered, holding the bottle to Sophia's dry lips. She drank greedily, trying to gather her thoughts. "Why are you doing this?" "My father will pay whatever you want." The leader laughed, a cold sound that echoed through the empty warehouse. "It's not just money we want from the legend Sylvester Stallone. Your father has many enemies, you know? People he's wronged throughout his illustrious career." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't a simple kidnapping for money, there was something more personal, darker. At Stallone's mansion, Frank Grillo spread surveillance and communications equipment across the mahogany dining table. "They're going to call back with payment instructions. When they do, we need to trace the call." Stallone nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. In a locked drawer in his office he kept a Beretta 92 FS, the same gun he had used in Rambo 3. He never imagined he would need it in real life. "Sly, I know what you're thinking," Grillo said, noticing his friend's distant look. "But you're not Rambo. You can't just go around shooting." Stallone looked at his friend with an intensity Grillo had only seen in movies. "No, Frank. I'm not Rambo. I'm worse. I'm a father whose daughter is in danger." As night fell over Los Angeles, the young kidnapper, who called himself Diego, offered Sophia a sandwich. "I'm sorry about that," he muttered, making sure the others couldn't hear him. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." Sophia studied the boy's face, who didn't look a day over 20. Then help me get out of here, she whispered. Diego shook his head. I can't. He'd kill my family. He pointed discreetly at the leader, who was talking on the phone across the warehouse. Who is he? Sophia asked. What did my father do to him? Diego hesitated, glancing nervously over his shoulder. His name is Victor Ortega. His father ruined his life 15 years ago, while filming The Expendables in Colombia. Stallone's phone rang at exactly 10 p.m., just as his kidnappers had promised. Heart pounding in his chest, he answered it and put it on speakerphone while technicians tried to trace the call. 5 million in cryptocurrency, the distorted voice said. I'll send you the digital wallet. You have 24 hours. Stallone took a deep breath. I want to talk to my daughter first. There was a moment of silence, then Sophia's shaky voice came on the line. Dad? I'm fine. Don't call the police. They know about, her voice cut off abruptly. Stallone clenched his fists so hard his knuckles turned white. If you hurt my daughter, I swear to God I will hunt every single one of you to the ends of the earth. The kidnapper's cold laugh echoed over the loudspeaker. Always the hero, aren't you, Stallone? But this time, you're not following a script. 5 million. 24 hours. The call ended. Frank Grillo looked at the technician, who shook his head. Signal bounced off multiple servers. Untraceable. Jennifer walked into the room, her eyes red from crying. What was she going to say? They know about... About what? Stallone exchanged a meaningful look with Grillo. During the filming of The Expendables in Colombia in 2009, there was an incident that never made it to the press. A local stunt coordinator died under suspicious circumstances. The case was covered up with money and influence. I need to make a call, Stallone said, retreating to his office. He dialed a number he hadn't called in years. Jason, it's Sly. I need your help. Jason Statham, his co-star in several films, answered promptly. What's wrong, Sly? When Stallone explained the situation, Statham didn't hesitate. I'm on the next flight out. I'll call Dwayne, too. Meanwhile, Sistine Stallone, the middle daughter, frantically scoured Sophia's Instagram and other social media accounts for clues. She posted a picture at Century City Mall 3 hours before she disappeared, she told her mother. I'm going to call some friends who work there, see if we can get the security footage. In the warehouse, Victor Ortega was watching Sophia with a piercing gaze. Does your father remember me? Did you ask him about my brother? Sophia shook her head, confused. I don't know what you're talking about. Ortega stepped closer, showing a scar that ran across his face from his left eye to his chin. My brother was Javier Ortega, a stunt coordinator. Your father killed him and covered it up as a work accident. Frank Grillo and his team set up an operations center in the guest house of Stallone's mansion. Maps of Los Angeles covered the walls, with possible locations marked in red. The phone signal came from this area. One of the technicians pointed to an industrial area near the port. But it could be another decoy. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson arrived at the mansion around midnight, accompanied by 2 former Navy SEALs who were on his security detail. We're with you, brother, he said, hugging Stallone. I've already spoken to some contacts at the LAPD. They're keeping an eye on it and not making a fuss. While the men planned, Jennifer and her daughters reviewed the security footage Sistine had obtained through contacts. There! Scarlett exclaimed, pointing to the laptop screen. That man has been following Sophia since Balenciaga. The image showed a man in a dark suit, keeping a measured distance from Sophia. Stallone watched the action in his home with a mixture of gratitude and grim determination. In just a few hours, his mansion had been transformed into a hub worthy of one of his action films. But the reality was far more frightening than any fiction. His daughter was in the hands of a man thirsting for revenge, and time was running out. I've identified the man from the mall, one of the technicians announced, entering the room with a tablet. Marcos Vega, a former Colombian military man, works as a mercenary. He has ties to cartels and has been seen with Victor Ortega, a name that came up in our preliminary investigation. The name confirmed Stallone's suspicions. Victor was the older brother of Javier Ortega, the stuntman who had died during filming. At the time, an internal investigation concluded that Javier was under the influence of cocaine when he fell from a helicopter. The family never accepted the official explanation. "We need to find out where they're keeping Sofia," Statham said, studying the maps. "This industrial area has dozens of abandoned warehouses. It would take days to check them all." Stallone, who had been silent, finally spoke. "We don't have days. We have hours. And I know exactly who can help us." Half an hour later, Mickey Rourke walked into the mansion, looking older and more worn than in his heyday. "Sly, my old friend," he said, hugging Stallone. "I hear you need some connections in the LA underworld." Rourke, who had had his own brushes with the law and had connections with criminal elements over the years, still maintained valuable contacts. Meanwhile, at the warehouse, Diego approached Sofia again when the others were distracted. "I got this for you," he whispered, slipping a small pocket knife into her hand. "Wait for the right moment." Sofia hid the object in the folds of her clothing, a glimmer of hope emerging for the first time since her abduction. Dawn found Sylvester Stallone in his office, studying a detailed map of the Los Angeles waterfront. Mickey Rourke had left hours earlier, promising to return with information. Jason Statham and Dwayne Johnson slept on makeshift couches, while Frank Grillo coordinated shifts with his security team. "Sly," Jennifer called from the doorway, offering a cup of black coffee. "You need to get some rest." Stallone accepted the coffee but shook his head. "I can't do it, Jen. Every time I close my eyes, I see her scared face." Jennifer sat down next to her husband, resting her head on his shoulder. "We'll find her. You've been her hero, ever since she was little." The memory brought a sad smile to Stallone's wrinkled face. Sofia, at age 5, watching Rocky for the first time, jumping on the couch and shouting "Go, Daddy," during the final fight. How quickly she had grown into a determined young woman who followed her own dreams, far from the spotlight that had always haunted her family. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Mickey Rourke. "I've got something, Sly." An informant spotted suspicious activity at an abandoned Pacific Maritime storage warehouse near San Pedro. 3 men and a young woman arrived there last night. Stallone felt his heart race. "Are you sure?" "My contact has worked the docks for 30 years. If he says he saw it, he did." As Stallone relayed the information to his team, Jennifer prepared to pay the ransom. $5 million in Bitcoin, transferred to an anonymous wallet, as instructed. "It's just cash," she said, finalizing the transfer. "I want my daughter back." But Stallone knew it wouldn't be that simple. Victor Ortega didn't just want money, he wanted revenge. In the warehouse, Sofia worked discreetly to cut the ropes binding her wrists, using the small pocket knife Diego had given her. The young kidnapper brought her water and food regularly, always taking the opportunity to exchange a few words when the others were not around. "Why are you helping me?" she asked in a whisper. "Because this is wrong," he replied. "I am not a criminal. Victor forced me to participate by threatening my family." Marcos Vega, the ex-military man who had approached Sofia at the mall, noticed the closeness between the hostage and the young man. "Be careful with her," Diego warned. "She's her father's daughter." "Manipulative." Diego nodded nervously, moving away from Sofia. But the warning had come too late, the ropes had already been almost completely cut. At Stallone's mansion, the team was finalizing their plan. "We have 2 options," Frank Grillo explained, pointing to the map. "We can pay the ransom and wait for Sofia to be released, or we can take action." Stallone didn't hesitate. "We'll do both. Jennifer will make the transfer at the agreed time. In the meantime, we'll position ourselves around the warehouse." "It's risky, Sly," Statham warned. "If they notice us, they could hurt Sofia." Stallone looked at his friend with determination. "That's why we need to be invisible. Like in the movies, but without cameras and no second chances." Dwayne Johnson nodded. "My SWAT contacts can supply tactical gear, no questions asked." As preparations progressed, Mickey Rourke returned with detailed blueprints of the warehouse complex. "This one," he pointed to a structure near the dock, has 2 main entrances and an emergency exit at the back. My contact says there's only activity in this section. Stallone studied the blueprints, memories of his days filming stunts coming back to him. We need eyes in there before we can do anything, he said. That's when Sistine, who had been monitoring social media for clues, had an idea. What if we use a drone? I have a friend who works in aerial cinematography. An hour later, a small drone equipped with a thermal camera was quietly flying over the warehouse complex. The images were transmitted to a laptop in Stallone's mansion. For heat signatures, the drone operator confirmed. 3 moving, 1 sitting, probably Sophia. Time to move, Stallone decided, grabbing a bulletproof vest that Dwayne Johnson had brought. Jennifer hugged her husband tightly. Bring our girl back, she whispered. And you come back too. Stallone kissed his wife, silently promising that he would return with their daughter. The team split into 3 unmarked vehicles. Stallone, Statham and a former SEAL in one, Dwayne Johnson and 2 bodyguards in another, Frank Grillo and his team in the third. Discreet communicators allowed constant contact. Remember, Stallone said as they drove to the port, we want Sophia back safely. That's the priority. At the warehouse, Victor Ortega compulsively checked his Bitcoin wallet, waiting for the transfer. 20 minutes to go, he announced. If the money doesn't arrive, we'll start sending pieces of the little princess to the hero daddy. Sophia, who had finally managed to cut the ropes without anyone noticing, was waiting for the right moment to act. Diego, increasingly nervous, approached Victor. And after we get the money? We'll release her, right? Victor looked at the young man with contempt. Of course not, idiot. She saw our faces. And besides, I want Stallone to suffer like I did. The young man turned pale, realizing the terrible mistake he had made by getting involved in that plan. Meanwhile, the 3 vehicles were positioned strategically around the warehouse complex. Stallone, wearing a bulletproof vest over a black t-shirt, checked the Beretta he had brought with him. Beside him, Jason Statham adjusted a night vision device. Just like old times, the British actor commented. Except this time it's real, Stallone replied, the gravity of the situation weighing on every word. The sun was beginning to set over the port of Los Angeles, casting long shadows across the abandoned shipping containers and warehouses. Stallone, crouched behind a stack of wooden crates 50 yards from the target, watched the warehouse through binoculars. Movement at the east entrance, he whispered into his comm, a man smoking, probably Marcos Vega. Confirmed, Dwayne Johnson replied, positioned on the roof of a nearby building with one of the former SEALs. I have a clear view of the west entrance. No movement. Frank Grillo and his team had split up to cover possible escape routes, while Jason Statham prepared to enter through a skylight in the roof. Inside the warehouse, Victor Ortega smiled as he saw the notification on his phone. The money has arrived, he announced, showing the screen to Marcos. 5 million. Stallone really loves his little girl. Sophia, still pretending to be tied up, watched the kidnapper's every move, waiting for the right moment to use her newfound freedom. What now? Diego asked, the nervousness evident in his trembling voice. Victor put his cell phone in his pocket and pulled out a pistol. Now we're done. Marcos, get the camera ready. I want Stallone to see the look in his daughter's eyes when he pulls the trigger. Sophia's blood ran cold. There was no more time to wait for rescue, she had to act. With a quick movement, she stood up from her chair, surprising the 3 men. Diego, seeing the situation deteriorating, made an impulsive decision. No, he shouted, throwing himself at Victor. The gun went off, the bullet hitting a metal box above Sophia's head. The sound of the shot echoed through the empty warehouse. Shots fired! Dwayne Johnson warned over the intercom. I repeat, shots fired inside the warehouse. Stallone's heart sank for a second. We're going in. Now, he ordered, abandoning all pretense of subtlety. Statham, already positioned on the roof, broke the skylight with a powerful kick and climbed down a rope, while Stallone and Johnson converged on the entrances. Inside the warehouse, chaos had broken out. Victor pushed Diego away, pointing the gun at the young trader. You betrayed me, he growled. Before he could fire, Sophia grabbed a nearby iron bar and hit Victor's arm with all her strength. The gun fell, skidding across the concrete floor. Marcos, realizing that the plan was falling apart, ran for the back exit. "Freeze!" Dwayne Johnson's booming voice echoed through the warehouse as he burst through the west door, gun drawn. Marcos stopped, slowly raising his hands. At the same moment, Jason Statham was descending the rope, landing with the agility of someone who had done this hundreds of times on film sets, but this time, with real adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Father!" Sophia screamed as she saw Sylvester Stallone walk through the front door, his Beretta firmly in hand. His eyes, so like her father's, were wide with fear and relief. Victor, taking advantage of the momentary distraction, grabbed a second gun hidden at his ankle and pointed it at Stallone. "You took my brother from me," he screamed, his face contorted with rage. "Now I'm going to take your daughter from you." Time seemed to slow down. Stallone saw Victor's finger tighten on the trigger and threw himself to the side, firing his own gun in the process. Victor's shot missed by inches, while Stallone's bullet hit the kidnapper's shoulder, sending him falling to his knees, howling in pain. "Sophia!" Stallone ran to his daughter, hugging her tightly, feeling her body tremble. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her dirty face. "I'm fine, Dad. I knew you'd come." For a moment, the veteran actor forgot about everything, the cameras, the kidnappers, the famous friends who had helped him. He was just a father hugging his daughter, silently thanking her for being alive. Dwayne Johnson and his team had already restrained Marcos, while Statham held Victor at gunpoint. Diego remained on the ground, hands on his head, visibly shaking. "This kid helped me," Sophia said, pointing at Diego. "He gave me a pocket knife to cut the ropes. He's not like the others." Frank Grillo entered with the rest of the team, taking control of the situation. "Let's get her home," he told Stallone, who was still holding his daughter. "My contacts in the police are on their way. They'll keep everything low-key, like we agreed." Stallone nodded, grateful for his friend's efficiency. As they were escorted out, Victor Ortega, bleeding and handcuffed, glared at Stallone with hatred in his eyes. "This isn't over," he spat. "The truth about my brother will come out." Stallone stopped, staring at the man who had nearly taken his daughter from him. "Your brother was on drugs when he fell from that helicopter. The investigation was clear. I'm sorry for your loss, but kidnapping my daughter won't bring Javier back." Victor laughed bitterly. "Investigation? You bought those investigators. Javier has never done drugs in his life. He found out something about you, something you didn't want to come to light, and that's why he had to die." Stallone frowned, genuinely confused. "What are you talking about?" "Dad, let's go," Sophia pleaded, tugging on Stallone's arm. "He's just trying to provoke you." Stallone hesitated, unsettled by the accusations, but allowed his daughter to lead him out. As they walked to the car, he couldn't get Victor's words out of his mind. What could Javier have discovered? And why would someone falsify a toxicology report? On the way back to the mansion, Sophia told him everything that had happened since the kidnapping. "Diego is not a criminal, Dad. Victor threatened his family. I think he deserves a second chance." Stallone looked at his daughter with admiration. Even after everything she had been through, she could still feel compassion. "I'll talk to Frank about it," she promised. When they arrived at the mansion, Jennifer ran to the car before it even came to a complete stop. Mother and daughter hugged each other, sobbing, while Stallone watched with a heavy heart. Sistine and Scarlett joined in the embrace, forming a protective circle around their sister. The family was complete again. Later, after Sophia had taken a shower and changed her clothes, the family gathered in the living room with the friends who had helped with the rescue. Dwayne Johnson, Jason Statham, Frank Grillo and Mickey Rourke shared a bottle of rare whiskey, celebrating the success of the operation. "Just like old times," Statham toasted. Except this time, the bullets were real. Stallone smiled, but his mind was still troubled by Victor Ortega's words. I needed to find out the truth about Javier's accident. If there was something dark in that story, he wanted to know. Not for Victor, but for himself, and for Sophia, who had nearly paid the price for a secret he hadn't even known existed. 3 days after Sophia's rescue, life at the Stallone mansion began to return to normal. The press had miraculously not discovered the kidnapping, a testament to the discretion and efficiency of the operation led by Frank Grillo. Victor Ortega and Marcos Vega were in custody, facing charges of kidnapping, extortion, and attempted murder. Diego, thanks to the intervention of Sofia and Stallone, had received a lighter deal in exchange for his cooperation. But Sylvester Stallone couldn't rest. Victor's accusations about Javier Ortega's death continued to haunt him. "I need to find out the truth," Jennifer said as they sipped coffee on the balcony overlooking the ocean. "If someone used my name to cover something up, I want to know." "Are you sure, Sly?" Jennifer asked worriedly. "This happened 15 years ago. Maybe it's best to leave the past in the past." Stallone shook his head, determined. "I can't. Sofia almost died because of this. What if there are others like Victor out there, holding a grudge for something I didn't even do?" That afternoon, Stallone met with Mickey Rourke in his office. "I need your help again, Mickey. I want to find out what really happened to Javier Ortega during the filming in Colombia." Rourke nodded, asking no questions. Some Hollywood secrets were kept by people who lived in the shadows, and Mickey knew a lot of them. "I'll make some calls," Rourke promised. "But it will cost a lot, and I'm not just talking about money. Some people don't like it when old bodies are dug up." Stallone knew this better than anyone. In his nearly 50-year career, he had seen the dark side of the entertainment industry, the side the public never saw. Meanwhile, Sofia was recovering from her trauma with the help of her family and a therapist specializing in post-traumatic stress. "You know what's weird, Dad?" she said during a walk through the mansion's garden. "The whole time I was there, I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of never seeing you again." Stallone hugged his daughter, feeling a mixture of pride and pain. "You were braver than any character I've ever played," he said, his voice breaking. "Braver than Rocky, tougher than Rambo." Sofia laughed, wiping away a tear. "I guess I got that from you and Mom." A week after the kidnapping, Mickey Rourke returned with a manila envelope. "I found something," he said, handing the package to Stallone. One of the production assistants on The Expendables kept copies of emails and reports that were never included in the official investigation. Stallone opened the envelope with shaking hands, spreading the documents out on the table. What he found made his blood run cold. Emails between studio executives and the film's executive producer discussing how to fix the Ortega problem before he ruined everything. Original medical reports that showed no trace of drugs in Javier's system, followed by altered versions that indicated high levels of cocaine. An order for the Ortega family to pay $2 million, on the condition that they sign confidentiality agreements. "Oh my God," Stallone muttered, running a hand over his wrinkled face. "They faked everything. But why? What did Javier find that was so dangerous?" Mickey pointed to one email in particular, dated 2 days before the accident. In it, Javier mentioned finding evidence of money laundering through the production of the film, millions of Colombian government funds diverted into offshore accounts. The studio was laundering money for Colombian politicians, Mickey explained. Javier found out and threatened to expose everything. Then he had an accident, and his name was used to authorize the payment to the family. Stallone felt a wave of nausea. His name, his reputation, had been used to cover up a murder. "Who was behind this?" he asked, his voice shaking with anger. Mickey hesitated. "Are you sure you want to know? Some of these people are still powerful in Hollywood." Stallone nodded, determined. "I need to know. For Sofia, for Victor, and for Javier." The name Mickey revealed was that of one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood, someone Stallone had worked with on several films. Someone he considered a friend. "Richard Hammond," Mickey said. "He orchestrated the whole thing and used his name as collateral." He knew no one would question whether Sylvester Stallone stood by the official version. That evening, Stallone gathered his family in the living room. Jennifer, Sofia, Sistine, and Scarlett listened quietly as he explained what he had discovered. "What are you going to do, Dad?" Sistine asked when he finished. Stallone looked at each beloved face before answering. I'm going to do what should have been done 15 years ago. I'm going to expose the truth. Jennifer squeezed his hand in concern. This could end your career, Sly. Hammond has many allies. Stallone smiled sadly. My career has had enough screen time, Jen. I can't live with the knowledge that my name was used to cover up a murder. The next day, Stallone visited Victor Ortega in prison. The man, his arms still in a sling from the gunshot wound, looked up in surprise as the actor entered the visiting room. Are you here to finish the job? He asked bitterly. Stallone shook his head, placing the envelope containing the evidence on the table. I've come to bring you the truth about your brother, he said simply. You were right, Victor. Javier wasn't on drugs. He was murdered because he discovered a money laundering scheme, and my name was used without my knowledge to cover it up. Victor took the documents with shaking hands, tears beginning to form in his eyes as he read them. Why are you showing me this? He finally asked, his voice hoarse. Why should I believe you? Stallone sighed deeply. Because I'm going to make this public. I'm going to clear your brother's name and make those responsible pay. I can't bring Javier back, but I can give him and you the justice you deserve. Victor studied the face of the man he had hated for so many years, searching for signs of deceit. He found only sincerity and determination. What about your daughter? I almost killed her. Stallone felt his anger rise again, but he controlled it. Sophia is alive. And she was the one who convinced me to seek the truth, even after what you did. As Stallone got up to leave, Victor called out to him. Stallone. What's going to happen to me? The actor paused in the doorway, looking over his shoulder. I'm going to talk to the prosecutor. Explain the circumstances. What you did was wrong, but I understand why you did it. Maybe we can find a middle ground. In the weeks that followed, Hollywood was rocked by an unprecedented scandal. Sylvester Stallone, in an exclusive interview, revealed how his name had been used to cover up the murder of Javier Ortega and an international money laundering scheme. The evidence he presented was irrefutable, leading to the arrest of Richard Hammond and several studio executives. Victor Ortega, in a plea deal facilitated by Stallone's testimony, received a reduced sentence. Marcos Vega, with a more extensive criminal history, faced harsher consequences. Diego, the young man who had helped Sofia, was given probation and a job offer at the Stallone family's charitable foundation. 6 months after the kidnapping, the Stallone family gathered for a special dinner at their mansion. Jason Statham, Dwayne Johnson, Frank Grillo, and Mickey Rourke were the guests of honor. A toast, Stallone proposed, raising his glass. To the truth, no matter how painful it is. And to family, who gives us the strength to face it. Sophia, sitting between her sisters, smiled at her father. The trauma of the kidnapping had left scars, but it had also made her stronger. And here's to you, Dad, she added. For being a hero in real life, not just on screen. Stallone felt tears well up in his eyes as everyone raised their glasses. Later that evening, as he walked along the beach with Jennifer, Stallone reflected on the events of the past few months. His career had suffered, to be sure. Some projects had been canceled, doors had closed. But others had opened, offers to direct films about corruption and justice, invitations to speak at universities about ethics in the entertainment industry. Regret? Jennifer asked, lacing her fingers with his. Stallone looked out at the ocean, then at the sunlit mansion where his daughters were safe. Not for a second, he replied. Some roles you play for the money or the fame. Some you play because they're who you really are. The next day, Stallone received an unexpected letter. It was from Javier and Victor Ortega's mother, an elderly woman who lived in a small village outside Bogota. In simple Spanish, she thanked him for restoring her son's honor and helping Victor find redemption. You have brought peace back to our family, she wrote. May God bless you and your loved ones. Stallone kept the letter in his office, along with his Oscars and Golden Globes. Of all the recognition he had received in his long career, this simple thank you was perhaps the most meaningful. It wasn't Rambo or Rocky who had won this victory, it was simply Sylvester Stallone, a father who would do anything to protect his family and right a wrong, even if it wasn't his own. By the time the press finally got wind of Sophia's kidnapping, the story had morphed into something different. It was no longer about a crime, but about redemption, truth, and justice. Sophia, with the support of her family, decided to use her experience to help other trauma victims by establishing a foundation to provide therapy and support. And what about Sylvester Stallone? At 78, he had found a new purpose. No longer just an action icon, but a man who used his influence to make a real difference. In life, it doesn't matter how many times you fall, he said in his speech at the inauguration of Sophia's foundation. What matters is how many times you get up and keep fighting for the truth. As the audience applauded, Stallone looked at his family in the front row, Jennifer, Sophia, Sistine and Scarlett, and knew that of all the roles he had played, that of father and defender of truth was, without a doubt, the most important. And unlike its on-screen characters, this story would not end with the closing credits. It would live on in the lives it had touched and the truths it had revealed. The true happy ending wasn't in defeating the villain or saving the day, but in facing the truth with courage and using that truth to heal old wounds and create a better future. For the Stallone family, that future began now, stronger and more united than ever.